Have you ever reached a point where you were not asking God for a miracle anymore? You were asking for clarity, not necessarily a dramatic answer, not a voice from heaven, not some impossible coincidence that would settle every question you've been carrying. Just something small enough to help you know what to do next. A reason to stop second-guessing yourself. A little confirmation that you are not completely lost. Because there are moments in life when uncertainty becomes exhausting. You can pray about the same situation for months. You can think through every possibility. You can ask people you trust. You can replay the conversation, remember what was said, analyze what was not said, and still find yourself standing in exactly the same place. And eventually you whisper, "God, I just need a sign." Maybe you're asking that because of a relationship. Maybe someone walked away, and you don't know whether to release them or remain open to reconciliation. Maybe you met someone new, and you're afraid to believe that something good could actually be happening again. Maybe you're trying to decide whether to send the message, take the job, move to the new place, begin again, forgive someone, or finally close a chapter that has remained emotionally unfinished for far too long. Or perhaps your question is even more basic. God, am I going in the right direction? And I want to offer you something that may change the way you think about signs. Sometimes the sign you need is not information about what will happen. Sometimes it is wisdom about what you should do with what is already in front of you. That distinction matters, because when we are desperate for certainty, we can start looking for signs everywhere. A name appearing unexpectedly, a song playing at the right moment, someone viewing a story, a dream, a repeated number, an old photograph appearing in your memories, a person reaching out after months of silence. And any of those things may feel emotionally significant. But significance is not the same thing as instruction. A coincidence can touch your heart without telling you what decision to make. A feeling can be intense without being God's direction. And a person can return to your life without necessarily belonging in your future. This is where mature faith becomes different from spiritual superstition. Mature faith does not require us to turn every unusual event into a coded message from God. It teaches us to become people who can discern. And discernment is slower, quieter, and more honest than certainty. Think about how many times you have wanted God to answer a complicated question with a simple yes or no. Should I wait? Should I let go? Is this person right for me? Should I try again? Is this opportunity from God? Am I making a mistake? We want a sign because a sign seems easier than wisdom. A sign can feel like permission. Wisdom requires participation. It asks you to look at character, circumstances, patterns, consequences, motives, scripture, counsel, and your own emotional state. It asks you to become honest. And sometimes honesty is exactly where the answer begins. Imagine a woman in her 50s who has been divorced for several years. She has finally started dating again, cautiously. Then she meets someone who makes her feel alive in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. The conversations are easy. The attraction is there. He tells her things she wants to hear. And then, slowly, she notices something. He is inconsistent. He disappears for days. He avoids conversations about commitment. When she expresses a concern, he tells her that she is overthinking. But then he comes back with affection, attention, and promises. And because she has prayed about finding love again, she starts asking God for signs. Lord, if this is the person, please show me. Then one Sunday, she hears a sermon about restoration. On Monday, he calls. On Tuesday, she sees his name in an unexpected place. On Wednesday, she hears a song they once discussed. And suddenly everything feels connected. But perhaps the more important question is not, what sign did God give me? Perhaps it is, what is the pattern this person is already showing me? That question can be uncomfortable, because sometimes we ask God for a supernatural sign because we do not want to accept a natural fact. We want a sign that the person will change because the evidence of who they are right now is disappointing. We want a sign that the relationship will work because accepting that it may not would require grieving something we deeply wanted. We want a sign that we should keep waiting because letting go feels like admitting that all our hope was misplaced. And God is gracious enough to meet us in that uncertainty. But grace does not require God to make our preferred outcome true. This is one of the hardest lessons of mature faith. You can genuinely love someone and still need boundaries. You can genuinely forgive someone and still decide not to return to the relationship. You can genuinely believe God can restore something and still refuse to call every contact, memory, or coincidence a promise of restoration. You can hope for marriage without making marriage the proof that your life has finally worked out. And you can ask God for a sign without becoming dependent on signs. There is a moment in the Gospel of John that speaks directly to this human need. After Jesus' resurrection, Thomas struggled to believe the testimony of the other disciples. He wanted something tangible. He wanted to see and touch for himself. We often remember Thomas simply as doubting Thomas, but there is something deeply human in his response. He had experienced loss. He had watched Jesus die. The other disciples were telling him something astonishing had happened, but his heart was not ready to build its hope on second-hand information. Thomas wanted evidence, and when Jesus later appeared to him, Jesus met him in that moment. That matters. Jesus did not respond as though Thomas's desire for certainty made him uniquely defective. But neither does the story teach us that every believer must receive a private supernatural confirmation before moving forward. The larger invitation is toward faith. Faith does not mean pretending you have information you do not have. Faith means learning how to trust God when you do not have all the information. That is very different. And perhaps that is where some of us need to grow. We have been asking God, give me a sign. But maybe the deeper prayer is, Lord, give me wisdom. That is remarkably close to the prayer James gives believers. James says that if anyone lacks wisdom, they should ask God, who gives generously without finding fault. Notice what James tells us to ask for. Not secret information, not a guaranteed outcome. Wisdom, because wisdom changes the person making the decision. You may not know whether that person will come back, but wisdom can teach you what kind of relationship is healthy enough to receive them if they do. You may not know whether a new relationship will become marriage, but wisdom can help you recognize whether the person in front of you demonstrates honesty, consistency, humility, emotional maturity, shared values, and genuine faith. You may not know whether the door you are considering will lead somewhere beautiful, but wisdom can help you ask whether you are walking through it because you are being led, or because you are running away from something you are afraid to face. That is a different kind of sign. It is not spectacular. It is formative. It changes your ability to see, and perhaps that is what you have actually been needing. Not another coincidence. Better vision. Because when the heart is desperate, almost anything can look like confirmation. If you miss someone badly enough, silence can become mystery. If you want reconciliation badly enough, a text message can become destiny. If you are lonely enough, attention can become God finally answered my prayer. If you are afraid of being alone again, compatibility can become secondary to chemistry. This is why discernment matters. Your emotions are real, but they are not always reliable interpreters of reality. You can feel peace about something and still be ignoring an obvious problem. You can feel anxious about something good simply because vulnerability is unfamiliar. You can feel deeply drawn towards someone who is not capable of giving you the kind of relationship you need. And you can feel uncertain about something that is actually healthy because your past taught you to distrust stability. So instead of asking only, "What am I feeling?" ask, "What is true? What has this person consistently demonstrated? What happens when there is disagreement? Can you speak honestly without punishment? Is there accountability? Is there mutual effort? Are promises followed by action? Does the relationship make room for your faith rather than compete with it? Are you becoming more honest, more peaceful, more responsible, and more whole? Or are you becoming anxious, secretive, obsessive, and emotionally dependent on another person's responses? Those questions may not feel as exciting as a sign, but they can save you from confusing hope with evidence. And there is another kind of sign we rarely talk about. Sometimes the sign is what you are finally able to stop doing. Maybe you used to check your phone 20 times a day hoping for one particular name. Now you notice that you can put the phone down. Maybe you used to rehearse the same conversation in your head every night. Now you can remember it without needing to rewrite the ending. Maybe you used to believe that if someone left, you had to prove your worth until they came back. Now you understand that love cannot be begged into existence. Maybe you used to think forgiveness meant reopening every door. Now you understand that forgiveness and access are not the same thing. Maybe you used to believe that being alone meant being forgotten. Now you can sit in your own company without treating singleness like a punishment. Those changes may not look supernatural, but they are significant, because healing often arrives quietly enough that you almost miss it. You notice one morning that the memory still hurts, but it no longer controls the day. You hear their name and do not feel compelled to investigate. You see another couple holding hands and, instead of immediately thinking, "Why not me?" you can simply think, "I hope they are happy." You stop needing another person to validate the future you are trying to build. That is not the same as giving up on love. It is becoming free enough to receive love without making love your God. And that may be one of the most important signs of all. You are no longer asking another human being to settle a question only God can answer. Am I enough? You are never going to get a satisfying answer to that question from another person's attention. Because people are limited. People change. People leave. People return. People misunderstand us. People sometimes love us well, and sometimes they don't. Your worth cannot be allowed to rise and fall with another person's capacity to recognize it. That is too fragile a foundation for a human life. So if you came here because you have been asking for a sign, I do not want to tell you that this video proves something specific is about to happen. I cannot know that. And neither should you build your life around someone else's prediction about your future. But I can tell you something more grounded. You are allowed to ask God for wisdom. You are allowed to slow down. You are allowed to stop forcing meaning onto things you cannot yet understand. You are allowed to examine the evidence. You are allowed to acknowledge what hurts. You are allowed to hope without making a promise out of your hope. And you are allowed to move forward, even when you do not have every answer. Maybe the sign you have been waiting for is not, "This person is coming back." Maybe it is, "You do not have to abandon yourself while you wait." Maybe it is not, "This relationship is guaranteed." Maybe it is, "Pay attention to whether love is actually healthy." Maybe it is not, "Your life is about to change overnight." Maybe it is, "You have enough strength for the next faithful decision." That changes the question completely. Instead of asking, "God, tell me how this story ends," you can begin asking, "God, show me how to live faithfully while I do not know the ending." That is a prayer you can carry into every season, into dating, into marriage, into divorce, into reconciliation, into grief, into singleness, into starting over at an age when you thought you would already have everything figured out, because you do not need to know the entire road to take the next honest step. And please hear this if your heart is tired. Uncertainty does not mean God has abandoned you. Silence does not automatically mean rejection. Waiting does not mean your life has been placed on pause. And a closed door does not prove that you were unworthy of what was behind it. Sometimes the most painful thing is not that we lack an answer. It is that we have decided we cannot be okay until we get one. You can be okay while still wondering. You can heal while still hoping. You can release someone and still love them. You can desire marriage and still live a full life today. You can pray for reconciliation and still refuse to chase someone who is unwilling to do the work required for reconciliation. You can believe God is working without pretending you know exactly what He is doing. That is not weak faith. That is mature faith. And perhaps tonight, instead of searching for another sign, sit quietly with 3 questions. What do I already know that I have been avoiding? What wisdom would I ask God for if I stopped trying to control the outcome? And what is the next faithful thing I can do with the life that is actually in front of me? You may be surprised by how much clarity lives inside those questions, because sometimes God does not answer our uncertainty by giving us a preview of tomorrow. Sometimes He gives us enough wisdom to live today well. And if that is where you are right now, do not despise the small progress, the calmer response, the boundary you finally kept, the message you chose not to send, the conversation you finally had honestly, the forgiveness you offered without surrendering your dignity, the courage to begin again, the ability to sleep without checking your phone, the moment you realized that you can miss someone without needing them back. Those things matter. You may not be standing in the middle of a dramatic breakthrough. You may simply be becoming someone who no longer needs to be rescued by the next chapter. And that is a profound change. So yes, sometimes you just need a sign. But perhaps the sign is not a prediction. Perhaps it is clarity. Perhaps it is wisdom. Perhaps it is the quiet realization that you have been looking outside yourself for permission to do what you already know is right. Perhaps it is the courage to wait without obsessing, the courage to leave without hatred, the courage to love without losing yourself, the courage to hope without demanding certainty, and the courage to trust God without turning every coincidence into a prophecy. You do not have to know exactly what happens next. You only need enough light for the next honest step. And if you are still asking God for a sign, keep asking, but ask for something deeper than certainty. Ask for wisdom. Ask for discernment. Ask for the ability to recognize truth even when truth is not the answer you wanted. Ask for the strength to accept what you cannot control. And ask for the humility to let God be God without requiring Him to explain every detail of your story. Maybe the answer will come through circumstances, maybe through scripture, maybe through wise counsel, maybe through time, maybe through the consistent behavior of someone you are learning to see clearly. And maybe, for a while, there will simply be uncertainty. Even then, you are not without direction. You can choose honesty. You can choose dignity. You can choose patience. You can choose boundaries. You can choose forgiveness. You can choose faith. And you can keep living. So if this is the season where you have been saying, "Lord, I just need a sign," let this be your invitation to stop demanding a map and start asking for wisdom. You do not need to know whether everything will work out exactly the way you imagined. You do not need to know who will stay, who will return, or what tomorrow will bring. You need to know that your life still has meaning today. And it does. Your worth is not waiting for someone else's decision. Your future is not dependent on one person's return. Your faith does not require you to predict God's next move. And your next chapter does not have to begin with certainty. It can begin with one honest step. If this conversation gave you something to think about, tell me in the comments. What kind of clarity are you asking God for right now? Not a prediction, not a name, not a guaranteed outcome, just the wisdom you genuinely need. Because sometimes the most important sign is not that everything around you suddenly changes. It is that something inside you becomes clear enough to take the next right step.